Yeah, the board is willing to entertain proposals for that fellow that gave us the one. He wants to do a Lewis and Clark piece.
Oh, that's it, the Lewis and Clark thing.
Yeah. He wants to make some type of story.
Okay. But I didn't know when you were talking before this weird started.
I know.
So
Yeah.
he
And
donated
this is your
these
forum.
two. These two bought the auction and donated.
Got it.
And now he's interested in.
No, that's
You
important.
must be talking about something that
I'm getting
they don't want on the record or something.
Oh, wait, we don't, Brad.
Last minute.
Brad.
I think she might have.
Where's my gavel? Where's my gavel?
We don't have a
I think that might have lost
I was just
2,000
looking at the
emails.
board, but we don't.
We're not good.
So Dick
Oh,
is,
thank you.
or Sean is supposed to be here, but he's,
That intersection was all messed up.
That's
a while
true.
ago. He might be stuck.
Coming up to the airport?
You didn't get it?
No?
Oh, it was terrible. It was
Just right there and I saw some.
With what?
They're doing some, they didn't call us or anything as usual. They're doing some repair work. I saw the flag right there. But they had it backed up all the way down to town and then they had the top up here backed up to the terminal.
Well, thankfully I missed that. I sailed right up here.
I would love to do it, but I know it costs a lot of
well, I'll
money.
turn it off
So
again.
can we just not vote?
Yeah, I mean, you can
Oh, no, we
you can
can't do
start, you can start the director's report,
Okay,
Sure.
thank you very much.
but, okay.
I'll talk slow.
Okay, I'd like to call this,
There we go.
we do have a quorum.
We have a forum.
I apologize
Yeah, that's all
for
right.
being late.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you all stand to the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. What do we do? Roll call, board members, Commissioner Buck.
Here.
Commissioner Rooney is not here. Commissioner Hogan.
Yes.
Commissioner Swenson is not here. Commissioner Evans.
Here.
And Commissioner Talcott is here. I'd just like to welcome those in the audience, and as a reminder, this board appreciates participation from the public. If you have any comments throughout the board meeting or work session, please stand, state your name and address, and your comments will be heard. So, first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action, do not appear to have a significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member. The agenda consists of approval of the board meeting minutes from August 30th, 2016, payroll checks totaling $74,997.78, maintenance and operation checks 22558 through 612 totaling $925,732.40, and the approval of the passenger facility charge totaling $60,000, and the financial reports for August. Are there any changes or clarification, or what's the will of the board?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or comments? All those in favor of passing the consent agenda as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay. Director's report. Anything to talk about?
We got a lot. So if you've been reading the weekly reports, or reading the weekly reports, you see we've gotten through the radar issue over on the project, the construction project number 1634. If you hadn't noticed, we'd hit a radar line, or actually discovered a radar line was a lot shallower than the plans indicated it was, and so and it was direct buried too. which means there isn't any way to pull slack through the ground to get more slack in that line. So after a lengthy 4 or 5 weeks of debate with the FAA over what exactly that line was and what specification it needed to meet, we were able to purchase some cable that was readily available. The FAA had initially indicated we had to find a cable that was armored, which isn't made anymore, and that would have really blown the schedule, probably shut the project down for the year. But we were able to get them to agree that the cable that we could lay hands on was probably applicable, and they actually found spools of it at the FAA storage facility in Oklahoma, which might further lead you to the conclusion that it's probably the right cable. So we did complete the splices all last week. The signal actually improved, whether that's just the age of the line or the splices that we did take out one set of splices and replace them with new splices. So it could just be better splicing with the new line. So everything is up and operational. The radar is working, and the contractor's been able to grade over top of that radar now, so they're actually working in the area where the line is now. Right now, we're in the midst of hauling rock for sub-base material, and if you go out there right now, there's a couple noticeable things. The milling on the runway 16 is they're about half length of their first course of milling. And there are some areas that will get milled a little bit deeper, but they're making good progress on the milling. They've hauled quite a bit of rock in. And then the dirt strip, which is where all the dirt that was hauled out of taxiway C, the dirt strip is built. So if you go out there now, the dirt strip is actually in place. So we're actually hoping to get the guard out there this weekend to take a look at it so they can kind of see what they've got there. But the project is on schedule right now. They're planning to pave the second week of October. That'll include, at the front end of the paving schedule, our SRE yard. We're hoping to see some activity over there here in the next couple of weeks. Really
This
anxious
week, probably.
You're thinking even next week?
Yeah, this week.
Oh, good. So there'll be, you may recall we had to rock that because we didn't have enough budget to pave it at the time. Of course, that worked out well because oil was over $100 a barrel at that point. So this actually works out pretty good. So hopefully we'll get that paved before the snow starts, make it a lot easier to maintain that area. But all in all, the project I think is in really good shape. They've certainly had no shortage of labor or equipment out there. They've kept very busy. Very impressed with the amount of effort they're putting forward to keep this project on schedule, given that weather could be an issue here soon. The terminal LEDs are nearly complete. Both concourses are now done. Gate 5 has been completed, and then Gate 1 is yet to be completed. They're taking out the old ice cube tray lights and replacing them with new LEDs. And it's just an amazing improvement. I walked it last night, and it's so much brighter. I mean, it really looks like we've remodeled that entire area with just new lights. And the energy savings should be about 30% down those areas with the LEDs. The next stage, they're going to put in some motion sensors down both concourses. One of the problems we have right now is the airlines oftentimes don't come up through the concourse, so no one turns the lights on. They come up at the back at the gate, and they might turn the whole room lights on, but then the hallways never get turned on. So we want to put some motion sensors through there to make sure that the lights are getting turned on and off. There is limited lighting, about every fourth light's on because of the emergency lighting requirements, but when all the lights are on, it looks much nicer. So I'm anxious to get those motion sensors in, and that area looks so much better. We can maybe even walk down that way after the meeting to take a look at when we go out for the project tour. TSA was here this morning. They sent a team out to inspect our checkpoint. It was an advanced team to look at the placement of the new body imager. I think it seemed like we have everything exactly in place to go. There's actually a floor handhold there that has all the data cables, telephone cable, power cable, everything that was done for the AIT machine when we did the checkpoint a few years ago. As you recall, the checkpoint was designed to have an AIT at FAA's insistence, and at the last minute it was taken out. They're going down to Helena tomorrow to look at their checkpoint. They actually got theirs installed and then 3 months later had it removed. So I presume they're probably ready also. So we're hopeful that, as TSA's been saying, we might actually see this machine before Christmas. I think there's really almost no construction activity that's got to happen for it to go in. So the AIT is the body imager. that you do at the other airports. And the thing about it that would be a big improvement for us is, well, twofold. It requires less random screening. They have to do full pat-downs on people at a certain interval. When you have an AIT machine, you have to do less of those because the quality of what it's able to see is so much better. In addition, any artificial medical implants can be vetted completely with that machine without pat-downs. So we think, when you look at it on an individual basis, the average person will actually probably take a little longer to screen because you've got to get in there, you've got to do this. If you have a Kleenex in your pocket, they're going to see that, they're going to want you to take it out. It takes a little longer to vet that person, the average person. But when you look at the conglomerate of our passenger profile, we anticipate it's probably going to knock about 20% off the average time per person because of the artificial knees and hips and everything else, and the reduction in random screenings that will be required. In addition, it sets the stage for us to eventually have pre-check line. That's a decision we can make at a later date. But once we have the EIT in place, it'll free up our metal detector for a potential pre-check line if we choose to do that. So all in all, I think a really positive development. We're really excited to get that in there. I would say, maybe you guys correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I would say probably 75% of the complaints we still get have to do with the pat-downs because of the inability of the metal detector to vet those. Most airports now, nobody's patted down for those because they can be vetted through the machine. So we think customer service-wise is going to be a major improvement. Not to mention security-wise, much better security also.
Well, I'm personally celebrating.
Yeah.
Yay! Except I was making some nice new TSA friends over the years. Close personal friends.
Yeah.
But what prompted the change in?
They had always said they wanted to go to this. I think there's probably, given that the security environment has not continued down an unheightened path, I guess is the best way to put it. We continue to see risks from people that can't be predicted, that can't be vetted, from people in the community that aren't known risks. And so I think TSA is taking that very seriously. And given our location next to a nuclear base and a international border, I think we should be higher on the priority list than some other locations that don't have either of those things. So I think it's just they're finally working through their acquisition of more machines and the protocols for how to use the machines because when they first put them in place, it was significantly slower, and that was causing long lines at the bigger airports. So they were requiring more machines, and so their acquisition budget was completely obliterated by the larger airports. Now they've worked through how to use these machines. It's faster, and they're able to deploy some of these out to smaller airports again. But yeah, I think all in all, it's going to be a major improvement for us. Hopefully that will get done by Christmas, because that is the absolute height of these types of problems for us. We had really fairly significant lines last Christmas and then again at spring break. I remember at one point someone saying 9 women in a row had gotten patted down, and of course they have fewer women agents, and it requires a female agent to do that. So it just completely shut the line down for quite a bit of time until they could process the people through there.
So we shut down the metal detector when we're doing a pat down of an individual?
It can, because they've got limited staff. So you've got basically one person pushing bags through the belt. You've got another person watching the screen. You've got one person watching the metal detector, and you might have one floater that's around in there. And that, if they're lucky, they might have 2 females on shift, but a lot of times it's 1. So you have to pull somebody off one of those jobs to go and do that. And the one floater is doing things like making sure there's bins at the front of the line, so that people have something to put their stuff in and get it through there. Or in some cases when you have to pull the person off, who's helping get stuff into the machine, the vetting machine. So yeah, it really cripples the line when they've got a couple pat downs. And then when they get into what we've seen time and time again is oftentimes these same people that have a joint replacement are taking nitroglycerin or some type of blood thinner, and which sets off the explosive detection. So after the pat down, the agent takes his gloves and puts them into explosive detection, they light up, and now that person's got to be taken back to the back room for an even more intrusive test, which requires a supervisor. So now and that one has to have, when you're in the secret room, you got to have two people to make sure nothing, happens that can't be witnessed. So I mean, it really bogs things down pretty quickly. So I think, we'll see a tremendous benefit from having this machine. And the other thing that, you may remember when this machine first came out, there was a lot of concern about the naked body image that it is capable of seeing. But now all they see is a stick figure unless there's an area that has a medical device or something of interest, and then they do see that in resolution. So seems like the public has kind of accepted this technology now. The ART RFP is out. You probably saw in the weekly report. We've gotten at least a dozen, probably closer to 24 people interested in that have contacted us for the RFP. So it looks like we'll have a good field of folks interested in that. Proposals are due right after Thanksgiving. And I've got on the agenda here to review all of our committees. It's that time of year where we kind of need to look through what the committee assignments are. Hotel RFP will be let out yet this year. We're collecting some demographic data about the market right now through a consultant. They'll give us some market performance data about hotel occupancy in the area, financials of hotels in the area. And that's being put together right now, which will be included in that RFP. So we hope to have that out yet, probably in the next month. Engineering RFP, the master plan has just been accepted by the FAA. The FAA would like us to wait 2 months in order for people to read the RFP before 2 to 3 months. So we're hoping that the RFP would come out probably very late this year or maybe early next year once we get the go-ahead from the FAA on that. You may recall this is new guidance from the FAA that they released last fall. Up until now, the master plan had nothing to do with your engineering. But they linked the two last year and said you need to have the master plan available for engineers for a couple months before you do an RFP so that everyone can be familiar with it. My suggestion to them, because master plans can sometimes take 10 or 15 years to do and engineering contracts are 5 years, was to just have the CIP published. I'm hoping maybe someday that'll prevail, but for the time being we're living in this brave new world, so we ended up with a engineering extension for 1 year. And then it's going to have to leak over into next year because the project that we need to do next summer has to be bid by April 1st. So we're going to end up with a 2-year extension on a 5-year contract because of the new guidance. Let's see. And then we did hear back from AVMAX. They're sticking to their guns at $190,000 flat. So we've told them at the current time, we're just going to plan to maybe look for some short-term use of that building and then eventually transition our warehouses into the building. It's going to cost us well over $250,000 to replicate that same function when we've got to move our warehouses out of the Army bunker buildings that they're in. And it just makes more sense to me to preserve the building and use it. And it's a cinder block building that would last us a long time compared to what we have in our metal buildings over on the other side of the airfield. And then lastly, just a couple of quick travel reports. I did attend the Northwest AAAE conference in Bozeman this 2 weeks ago, where I spoke about some of the new FAA regulations along with a panel of other airport directors. I think there was really good traction from the audience to continue to pursue some of these issues. Particularly some of the new guidance that we're receiving on specification or modifications to standards. In the old days, the regional offices generally had sort of pre-approved certain mods to standards that were known in a particular region. For instance, in the Denver ADO, soil compaction was a known issue. The sands down there are very difficult to compact. You can't get full compaction standard. And so the ADO was able to approve those. These are all now being sent to headquarters, and it's taken weeks to vet them, and there's no pre-approvals. They have to be done every single year. We just think that's a terrible waste of bureaucratic time and money for issues, in most cases, that are known issues. So that's a great example. We talked about that quite a bit. along with some of the other new FAA guidance. And our goal is eventually, we're hoping that our trade association, AAAE, will take up some of these issues and begin to look for ways to get more input into the FAA rewriting schedule so that we can have some input into some of these decisions that are being made. I also attended last week the Air Force Association Conference in Washington, D.C. on behalf of the Montana Defense Alliance. It was an interesting conference. We go there every year to get an opportunity to meet with a number of the generals that impact our bases, both on the Guard side and Malmstrom. We did get quite a bit of information this last week. Interestingly, the airspace has become a topic of discussion again, and the lack of training space. And so, that was one of the takeaways that I got out of there, is there might be opportunities to pursue fighters given our community, given that the Air Force is looking for some F-16 training space along with the future basing of the F-35 in Guard communities. So there's a couple of things that we'll be working on as an association there to see if those are opportunities that we can pursue. In addition, the Air Force continues to talk about its update of its force, and eventually that'll include the ground-based nuclear deterrent, the ICBM. Right now it's still in very early conceptual stages, not a lot of discussion about it yet. The new bomber has been named and the specifications are out now, so that leg of the triad will be replaced pretty soon, and I think the Navy's pretty much done with announcing what they're going to do with the subs. So the ICBM will be the last leg of the triad that gets addressed. And some of the things that people have talked about as options for that are anything from rail car type of nukes that can be moved around the country and no one would know where they are, to highway units. I think the Russians use rail. Highway units that might be moved from place to place, to in-the-ground units like we have now, and then there's some discussion about some type of space-based system too. So there's a lot of options out there, and over the next few years, the Air Force will be looking at those for the future. Currently, they're saying somewhere in the 2030-35 timeframe would be when they would start the replacement of the new systems. So we anticipate things will stay pretty static until then. And that's all I've got.
That's it?
That's it.
Hey, question.
Yeah.
On this last meeting, when I read the minutes, I thought there was a motion for selling the upper shot for 190.
Yeah, 190, and then it's 190, and then the appraisal was, I think, a range of 238 up to 250 something. And so what we said is, ABMAX had offered 190. We said, okay, we'll do 190, but we want to recover $1,000 a year for 40 years to recover the bottom end. It's actually slightly below the bottom end of the appraisal.
Okay.
And we said, that's kind of the lowest I could recommend. I mean, because for our uses, it's actually still an effective building. We're not in a rush to sell it. We've got some other potential temporary users, or I shouldn't say temporary, but shorter term lease users that would use it until we need it, and then eventually we would probably just move our warehousing over there. And ABMAX is kind of firm where they are, and that's fine. I mean, it's worth it, whatever it is to them, and it's worth whatever it is to us, and that may not be the same number.
I didn't understand the $40,000. I didn't equate that. Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then one other thing I should have noted too on the terminal LED, we are looking. If you look at our electric year over year, we're down about 10% for August, which was the first billing cycle of the new year, because the July bill gets billed in August. So the outdoor lights we did last year. Our savings looks like about 10%. We've just done the interiors, and then we've got about that same time frame in August, we were doing some more of the exterior lights, like the ramp lights and things. So as we go through this year, it looks like we're on target to meet. We thought we'd get at least 20 to 25% off the energy bill, and it looks like that may be a practical reality. So that's good news, because that is our single largest line item expense. So hopefully that'll come to be.
Those are the lights holding up as well as I hoped.
Yeah, we haven't, we had one bulb go out here on the spotlights inside the terminal, and I think it was just a bad bulb. They got it put in and it immediately went out, so I think they got that returned on warranty. But these are particularly a good deal for us because the incandescent lights were costing $80 a piece, and the LEDs are only $60. So not only are we saving on the energy cost by about 2/3, we're saving on the acquisition cost quite a bit. But yeah, they're warranted actually, I think for 6 years, aren't they, Rob, most of them?
6 or 7 years.
Yeah, so they're actually warranted, so if we have problems with them, we should be able to get, it's probably a degrading warranty, I would think, and then or not full replacement.
I was thinking it was full replacement.
Oh, maybe it is, that'd be even better.
Material only.
Well,
I
that's
suspect.
Right.
right.
But out here, we didn't
Yeah,
change.
we
Oh, out
actually
here
did these
you can reach,
ourselves.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, these were.
Not the ones in the
bulbs.
parking lot.
No, those were whole new fixtures and everything else.
Do you anticipate we can change those ourselves in the future, though?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would think we'd be able to do that, so. Yeah, out here, we barely get 2 years because of the wind. I mean, it just blows those filament bulbs to bits. The FedEx ones are even worse.
Yeah, we get about 2 years on it. Yeah.
Any other questions? So just out of curiosity, and I'll state my conflict right up front in the hotel business, but your RFP, sounds like you're going to do a market analysis.
Yeah.
And then once you get the market analysis, you're going to determine whether you're going to put out an RFP or you're going to put out the RFP with the market analysis.
The market analysis would be in the document, whether it's an RFP or if it's a request for interest. We haven't decided that yet. I think the market analysis will give us some insight into that. And the consultant we used said the same thing. The bad thing about RFPs is you set that deadline date and everybody has to get their stuff together and that's the only time they can apply by. If you do an RFI, you could solicit for interested parties, have a very minimal requirement back. Just give us some information about your firm, what type of hotel would you be proposing, and that will introduce you to some new folks that would be interested that you can negotiate a deal with. Sometimes the RFPs, I think, solicit less interest because it's a dyed-in-the-wool process, and it's hard for companies to respond to that, developers in particular. That's one of the things we'll, as we get the market analysis in and see what the results are, I think that would be a good time for us to decide that. In addition, that same company that's doing the market analysis will give us a list of developers that are active in Montana, and even maybe the broader Northwest, so that we have a mailing list that we can actually reach out to make them aware. We've looked for good publications to publish something like this in, and there's not really a lot of magazines or anything that you can put it in that gets it a wide enough distribution that people would see it. So it'd be great if we had, in addition to whatever advertising we can find, a direct contact to some of these people to say, want to make you aware of this.
And I guess my only comment would be, it sounds like no matter what the market analysis says, you're going to move forward looking for interest.
I think we would, yeah.
And that's certainly, staff's prerogative, but generally speaking, you look at the market analysis and where's your time better spent? I mean, if the market analysis says...
Yeah, if it's terrible, I mean...
terrible, or, at what point is it worth staff's time at this point to move forward? I mean, there hasn't been a lot of positive, or a lot of interest so far. And quite honestly, if people are in the industry are looking for a site, it's not too hard for them to figure out that there's one out there, if they think it's a good place. But, they kind of target the spots that they want it to be. Like in hotel business, the line I hear is build it where they are, not where they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get your hotel up and running if you've got business around it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but the Crystal Inn, from what I've seen, has held up pretty well, in terms of occupancy and stuff over the last few years. And I think part of it is too, we may not attract the next Radisson in the community. I mean, that may not be our market. It may be a lower end hotel, a Comfort Inn or something like that. that would want to be up here. But I mean, from what I've seen, demand-wise, the hotels around the airport are actually doing better than the average hotel in the community.
You mean that one's doing better than the rest?
I think the ones around the airport seem to be doing all right, is what, kind of what we're hearing.
They're telling us, I mean, like with the Canadians, the ones that are closer, they're still getting the Canadians when the other ones are reporting that they're down on Canadian traffic. So just down in the marketplace and up here. You may have a different view on that.
I just hope we don't put, too much effort in it unless we know we've got a chance of being successful. And again, I've stated my conflict, so I won't say anymore.
John, have you spoken to your guard about their lodging requirements for Bill Weekend?
Well, that's exactly one of the key draws for up here, is you get that onslaught of people coming in. It is only once a month, but in the summertime you've got, long, was it 2 weeks in the summer, I think. But it's a nice staple, and the Canadians tend to be another group we think we do really well with, because they like to stay really close to the airport.
And iState was also excited to have that possibility for their clientele that can just walk across, so.
I don't think it's changed. It's really the lodging for the guardsmen is coordinated through Malmstrom. Malmstrom has contracts that help farm people out to various hotels in the city once they fill up out there, which they always do. So it might be worth talking to Malmstrom as well to see what their criteria are for where they lodge guardsmen. If there's some way
That's a
to
good
get
idea.
them closer to here, I know the guardsmen would appreciate that.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons. They don't have to do the long drive across town, et cetera. So it's a fairly predictable number, and if it could be skewed toward being in this location, then it'd work out well for everybody.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. We've got a not so full agenda, so let's work through it.
All right. So we got the fueling permit.
That would be it.
All right.
That would be it.
You may recall a couple of months ago, we had over the last year, we've had a couple spills, but the last couple of incidents involved some trucking companies that were working up here. And, our recommendation is we put together a fueling permit so that we have a relationship with those companies. We're mutually insured, so that it's clear that their insurance extends to us when there's damage that would occur on our property. And it gives us the ability to send a driver off-site, because if right now we have no real relationship with them at all, and there's no good way for us to enter into that equation and say we don't want this person here anymore because they're violating our rules. And we want to set some tools up for doing that with the fueling permit that we've put together. And we've had it reviewed by our legal team, and we think it's a good step forward for us to get a little bit more control over who's operating on our site, since we end up with so much of the potential liability in the cleanup stage. Anything else you'd add to that, Laura?
No, I think you hit it there.
So is this ready to be approved? Is that what you're
Yep.
asking for? So
Yes.
it's a good step forward, but it's the step we want to take. Okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to wait around, we're not going to,
No.
this is it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Sean?
I read through it. Did I miss it? Is there a expiration date on it?
It's a 1-year permit, isn't it, Laura? Do we set it up longer than that?
No, we set it up so that it goes, I think, for that as long as they would be fueling with us, but that we can pull that, obviously, on, I think, 90 days notice without cause.
Correct.
So there's only two companies here in town that are doing the fueling, so we would have this with them, and it would just continue on. Obviously, if their agent has a problem, doesn't follow the guidelines that are set forth, then we have the option of ending our relationship either with the individual or with the company based on the severity and what's going on, if they're doing their training and all of that. So it does keep going though.
So it's always easier not to reinvent the wheel. Did we start from scratch, or did we steal this from somebody else and just adapt it to our needs?
Well, in a lot of airports, the fuel farm's not owned by the airport. It's actually fairly uncommon to have the whole of the fuel farm owned by the airport. There's oftentimes the FBOs own their own, and then the other configuration you see at larger airports is an airline consortium actually owns the fueling infrastructure and runs it. It goes back to the master planning discussion where we said, this probably isn't an activity in the long term that we want to directly engage in. So, we did kind of create this one based on our needs. Yeah.
And Nick reviewed it.
Nick reviewed it, yeah. Yeah, I've never worked in an airport where we own the fuel farm.
Okay.
So the action items annually or more often would be the proof of insurance, and you're probably doing that already, right?
No.
No, we weren't getting that up until now. We had
And
no-
we're not named as additional insured either, I don't think currently.
Oh, really?
I don't think so.
No, I think that's in there, isn't it?
No, it is required in
right.
here.
No,
And
it
you
wouldn't-
guys,
Yeah.
it's the
We weren't
FBO who has
additional
had
insured either,
the,
and we, after this incident, decided we needed to be additional
Yeah.
insured.
they're the ones that have the relationship with the fueler right now. I mean, we really didn't. So this gives us that relationship, and then they're requiring to be additional insured, and we're requiring it as well.
So someone on the staff will be following them annually.
We do that with, yeah.
Okay.
It'll just be part of that process to get
And
that
then-
insurance in.
The educational compliance there, you're not planning, you're just putting that in there as a provision to ask for it, but routinely you will be asking for educational records? Is that right?
Well,
Right.
yeah, we want to make sure that they're, whatever the state's requiring of them, that, the person that's coming up here and servicing these things is compliant with the state permits. And the whole idea is, again, not to create new infrastructure other than the insurance, which we need to be mutually insured. But, the state has something in place, and we want to make sure they're compliant with it.
So then it would just, to get to Sean's point, it would just go into perpetuity with an annual requirement to get the insurance. Of course, following, if there's an incident, following this and all that, and that's that, right?
Right. I mean, the main benefits for us are, it gives us the insurance that we don't have. And then secondly, it gives us a protocol to deal with either a bad agent or a bad company that isn't following the safety rules, that's disabling the dead man switches and things like that. We actually have something in place that says, you're doing this service on a property, you agreed to these things, now we need to take action and get you out of here. Up until now, we haven't had anything.
Right. And is the $1 million standard and sufficient?
I think,
That was Mick's
yeah.
recommendation, to do the million.
I would think like for instance, we hold, was it 10 million, I think, that we're insured on our vehicles. The numbers for airports are really high because you can hit a plane and, that gets very expensive. So, I would say $1 million, in my experience of vehicle operators on airports, is about what you see. Colorado Springs, everybody had to have $1 million. So I would say that's pretty consistent.
And it is per occurrence, so
Yeah.
not capped.
Yeah, what can happen other than the place can blow up?
Well, just that,
Yeah, or you can lose 1,500 gallons into the ground and you'll be cleaning it up for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Plus, the other thing this gives us too is we have the companies on record as to, who was operating here if there is a problem.
Million seems a little light to me, but.
I know, that's what I'm worried about, but I don't know.
Per occurrence. Well, we could call around and find out, if other airports have anything higher than that.
That would be my only concern. Sometimes, the higher the deductible, the more money the attorneys go after. Sometimes they just go after policy limits, but everybody's gonna get drawn into this.
Yep.
Coleman's gonna get brought in, we're gonna get, no matter, what it is, whether it's someone that sneaks over the fence and throws a match over there.
Yep. Yeah, well, if there's death, I mean, anything can happen
Yeah.
value-wise. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's just,
Well, we can review that.
and actually, I would contact, who's our insurance carrier?
Cincinnati.
I would ask them.
That's not a bad idea.
You know, see what they think, and they'll probably want 10 or something that is, you know, much smaller spread between them and the guys.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, we can certainly do that.
Because, you know, we're pretty careful about airplane damage. You know, we've got protocol where, you know, they're not being watched as closely over there.
Well, no, and that's exactly the concern. We want them to understand it's, you know, but we're not gonna let it happen multiple times. This will be one and done type of thing, so.
Yeah, one's too many though.
Yep.
That's the problem. So I don't know, you're looking for approval from this board?
Yeah, we'd like to put the permit in place, and we can certainly do that after a review of the amount of the insurance. You know, we could, we could
Is reviewed or?
approve it subject to, you know, a discussion with our insurance company and maybe calling a couple other airports to see what their limit is.
Is everybody okay with that?
Have the fuel providers had any input on this?
No,
Not the field providers, both FBOs have looked at it.
They might have knowledge we don't have as well.
My suspicion is the two trucking companies involved have much more than $1 million in
Oh, yeah.
liability, substantially more,
Mhm.
I would think.
Yeah.
Would be a heck of a note if they both looked at it and said no. And good luck with getting fuel.
yeah.
Just
Yep,
devil's advocate.
So perhaps we find out how much liability coverage they already have and make that the number. If it's adequate.
But I move we accept it, as stated by John, with the review of the limit and our insurance company and other airports.
okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the document as presented after review of the limits with our insurance carrier and other airports, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, are there any other agenda items that anyone would like to bring at this time? Okay, Airport Authority, board member comments? Commissioner Buck, any comments?
None.
Commissioner Holman?
None.
Commissioner Evans? I have no comments at this time. Any comments from the public? Okay, with no further business to come before the board, I declare the meeting adjourned. You've got 5 minutes by that clock, and that isn't just in your room, that's being typed in your chair.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. What's happening? We got 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
Is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah. This one shouldn't take too long either.
No, we just gotta go over the committee assignments and.
I wouldn't hold my breath to see any space-based nuclear weapon systems.
Why
No,
not?
I mean either. Yeah.
Well,
I just read a book
there's a little
about
Or
it.
trains, we've been down to trains, planes, and automobiles, you know, they got
I
the,
need to be there.
Well, there's the small problem of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which
Yeah.
specifically restricts